Hey there. Before we start this episode, I wanted to jump into your ears straight away and let you know how you can support us best with this podcast so we can keep this going. So the most important thing that when you have listened to this episode would be share, share, share. Spread the word, drop our name, drop us in the conversation. If you see a question popping up somewhere, say, the Damn Parenting Ladies, they have an episode on this. Pop the episodes out. Get us into the conversation of the communities. This is the best way to support Eva and me. And give us a like on Spotify. Give us a follow. Jump over to Instagram, Damn Parenting Podcast. Make sure that you spread the word about what you like, why you like the episodes, and that you spread the knowledge that we are putting out there so it can be heard and received by everyone who needs to hear this. And this is what I just wanted to drop with you before now you can enjoy them chat or an expert episode. So let's see what's going to be on.
Hi, and welcome back to Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. As always, we are your hosts, Eva and
Maren.
And today we are joined again by Dr. Naomi. I was about to say Campbell, and I kept saying that every time we started this episode or this podcast back last year, but it's Dr. Naomi Gibson.
Yeah.
Hi, Naomi. Maren did threaten to start leaving those recordings and spitting them out somewhere during this year,
yes,
like just
they're stashed. They're stashed away in my secret stash folder where I have all the nice, cool snippets from the editing.
Exactly, and it's always me. But today, Naomi's joining us as we are going to be using these last couple of weeks of the school summer holidays to discuss going back to school or starting school, actually. So first come around from the first day our baby is born, from the first time we see them, the first coo, the first kiss, the first diaper. I mean, there's a lot of firsts, and the thing is, those firsts are actually really exciting. And these are the exciting moments that we really get to enjoy, the first steps and everything else that comes along with it. But when does that turn to an anxiety of first? So we become nervous of the first day of school. Between myself and Maren, I am the anxious one. And the thing is, my daughter will be starting school in September, and I am highly anxious about this. And I really wanted to have Naomi come on and really help soothe me, and just to really kind of help ease this anxiety feeling of why haven't I celebrated it and why is it becoming more nervous? Because as we're all very aware, the parents' anxiety can actually transmit to our little children. They can actually feel these, they can sense them. And if we're not confident and feeling assured, the child won't feel that either. And so we really need to be empowered. And so these couple of episodes that we have this month are really to help substantiate and give us those strong emotional feelings and empower us to be able to do that drop off for the first time and let our little one go in and actually come out with a big smile, having had a happy experience.
And especially because we are not in our home countries where we were schooled. So we can't really rely on, I'm going to tap into that experience of, I know this is how it was. Of course, 30 years later or plus. Yeah. But still you're out of your familiar education system and the, I'd say, customs within that and all that. So I think this is then an extra layer. As always, we discuss these topics here with the lens of we're the expat families living here in this other culture. So this is also why we wanted to address this topic, because it is going not just this whole first emotional step of, okay, our children are now entering this next phase, but also we are, if you don't have a child in school yet, and if you're totally new to that, and then being in this other educational system and this other school culture that, at least for me, is something that, although I'm not super nervous or anxious about her going to school, but I'm really, a part of me is like, okay, I need to learn the whole system. I can't just wing it. I can't just, this is how it's going to be, or I understand everything, where they're coming from, or what's important, or what the focus points are. So that is something that I'm also struggling, because I'm also entering this whole new phase here.
Yeah, you're starting school together and learning about it, and which would always be hard, or a transition, wouldn't it? But I think there's an extra layer of challenge when, as you say, you're doing it in a completely different culture. You're not just relying on the currency of knowing what school's like, and making connections and friends and things like that in the playground or in the school playing when you drop people off. And it's really different, and it's kind of important to go gently with yourself around that, isn't it? That it's a transition for the whole family, not just your kid that's going to school.
I think for me, one of the things that I was always remembering was the fact that, this is the first day of school for, as you said, for all of us as it is, but it's the anticipation of this to try and see it more as a challenge so that there's a way we can build up and kind of be prepared for it than that anxiety or the fear of the unknown, because your child's going to have their fears already, probably where do I go? What do I do? Who am I going to play with? They're going to have that. But the thing is, as parents, we're going to have the exact same thoughts, except we're going to have the added ones of what happens if this happens, so there's quite it's quite an explosive thought process that now a million thoughts are going to come in. And I'm leaving my child in a building they don't know, or they've been in maybe once or twice. They don't know the teachers, so it's a huge, fear that's ignited because it is an unknown.
Yeah. Just how important it is then you're with your child, aren't you? But you need to be disconnected from them as well, and not to necessarily project your own experiences onto them about how they might find a certain situation. For them, it actually might not be scary to be in a new place. It could be really exciting, and what might felt overwhelming for you as a little kid is something that they would relish. I remember my daughter coming back after maybe a month or so at school, and I said did you play with anybody today? She was like, no, I was walking around the playground on my own. And my immediate sinking heart feeling was oh gosh, she's on her own and no one likes her, and wouldn't that be terrible? Remembering that feeling myself from points in childhood. And then it was only when I asked the question, how was that for you? She was like, yeah, well, it was actually really nice. And I was looking at the flowers and I was picking up stones and look, I've got them in my pocket here. Realizing that she actually wanted that and she needed a break from the other kids. And she was just she's quite a dreamer, and she was just sort of daydreaming around the playground. So had I not taken that step of removing myself, I might have said, well, it's okay, and you can make friends, and let's have some play dates, and tried to sort of manage it for her, but it wasn't a problem. Does that make sense? How you must sort of take a step back?
Yeah, I think this is the first hot tip that we're going to remember, is that what you just said was so important. This whole, okay, we ask the question, we get the information, and then the first thing is, and how was that for you?
Yeah.
And then get the information. I think I just wrote this down for me.
Yeah, me too. That's on my notes.
Just checking in. How was that for you? Not even, how did you feel? But how was that for you? And then, that is such a great tip, because then we can take it from there, not go into our own experience and really listen.
Which is really hard, because naturally, your children activate something very quickly in you. And, there will have been traumas, small T traumas, big T traumas from childhood around making friends and being in the classroom and all of these things in all of us. And so those can get really quickly activated through our kids as well. But need to check in how they're actually doing rather than projecting that moment.
One of the things we were discussing earlier was the fact that we are actually coming from different backgrounds and different cultures and different countries around the world. And then coming into the Netherlands, you have, I think we lost track, 7, 8, 9 different choices of types of schools you can go to. So it is that thing of you're going in and you don't know what your child's going to do in that class. My understanding was Group 1 and Group 2 is they're playing. But when I've done the school visit, it's a case of it's not just playing. There is actual, activities and choices that they can do. And for me, it's that element of I don't know how to support them. So is there a way you can help us figure out okay, how can we empower ourselves to be prepared to also start learning this process with them?
Yeah, I suppose I'd think about what is in your control and what's out of your control as a way of managing that worry. So what's in your control is you can learn about the type of school that you've chosen. My daughter goes to a Montessori school. I'm learning as best I can about how that classroom setup looks, what's expected of the kids at different ages and stuff like that. But that's sort of where it ends in terms of my control over the situation. The rest is out of control in that they're going to do what they're going to do at school, and they're going to learn how they learn and develop how they do and make relationships, and all of those kind of important developmental things will just sort of happen outside of your control. And I think that's a challenge when your kids start school, because in a daycare setup, you'd usually get, they ate soup, they did 2 poos, and they played in the garden. You don't get that from school. It's really a kind of a black box, and that can be worrying. That's sort of a confusing new state of parenting, that your kid is going away from you and living their life separately, and you have to kind of relinquish that control a little bit. I mean, there's things in your control just thinking the conversations that you have at home around how their day was. So we do over dinner, when we remember a kind of a thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down, and sort of then try and ask questions around that sort of to ease out things. But something I noticed, particularly in the year of starting at 4 to now she's 5 and a bit, it's only recently that she's been able to recall what she's done in the day. And initially I thought like, oh gosh, she would just say, I don't know, or I can't remember. And I was like, really? You can't? But I think really she can't. That was a developmental process of, only recently saying like, oh, this kid did something funny, or we played outside, or we are doing counting or whatever. And to sort of allow that as well. So what's in your control is to ask the questions. What's out of your control is what comes up from them and what you do there.
What I also found important, and I've watched myself, is what information you share or what information I share from myself about my experience, because I've realized that this is also influencing how my daughter feels about it. Like one example was she said she's nervous about school, and then immediately I jumped, oh yeah, I was also nervous. And then she picked that up and then she said, see, Mama was nervous, so I'm nervous now. So like really, I caught myself and I was like, okay, now I need to ask her first and get more information about her feelings and her stuff than putting my experience on and then maybe tainting her or like pushing her into a direction of, oh, Mama was nervous, so I have to be nervous, or she was scared, so I will be scared, or like this immediate thought of this is what, because they do connect and they do seek assurance or guidance from us. So then when she asks these questions and I say that, then she feels, oh, this is how I should feel now, or this is how the situation will be. So this is where I really had to take a step back. And if she says from her, I'm nervous, then I can be like, oh yeah, I know how that feels.
Because that's also very validating, which is important for her to feel like it's okay to be nervous.
Yeah,
like, that's
exactly.
a big thing.
But I really wanted to wait for her to give me the information and then tap in, instead of me portraying this is my experience, this is how it is and was, and then her being either confused why she isn't nervous and maybe, oh, I'm not right because everyone needs to be nervous about school, or then really sticking on to it like, okay, she was nervous, so then I am nervous, yes, and then it's the focus there. So that was also one thing that really, and I guess this comes to parenting in general, really listening what's going on with your child and then put your own lens over it.
And to expect a variety of feelings in them and in yourself. Nervousness and excitement and sadness and worry and all of it, frustration, everything can all exist in the same time and same kind of experience. And that is not dissimilar to other sort of big transitional moments as in parenting, but it's, there's a lot of sort of intensity and build up into that starting school moment too.
So let's talk about the first day. So we will have had at least one, if not two meetings with the school where we usually bring our children as well with us so they can come in and see the grounds. And maybe the teacher might say to them, this is where you hang your coat or put your shoes or your lunchbox or what have you. So it's about parents knowing what to expect, but equally being able to discuss what to expect as well with their child thereafter. As we already said, like about the whirlwind of emotions that we're going to have, there's going to be the clinginess, the tearful, the resistance, but this is all normal. So how are we already also said about how like it projects, our emotions are projecting onto our child. The thing is, as much as we're going to try and bite our lip and we're going to try and be like, I'm going to be like the strong parent and I'm going to really guide them and I'm going to cry afterwards, whatever. Children also pick up on the fact that you might be hiding something or lying, like you're meant to be truthful to them because they can see when something's not right. So how do you think we can manage that if we start crying up in front of them? Like is there a way we can discuss it, or a way we can kind of, I don't know, is there a little skill or thing in our head that we can, I don't know, count to 10 and breathe or whatever it might be, but just to be kind of like, just stop yourself, be strong, just get through this, and then you can cry as much as you want at home.
Yeah, but then I'd also wonder what's wrong with crying with them or in front of them. If you were able to kind of explain what that is, or just like, oh, Mummy's so proud of you. This is such a big step. And, when big steps happen, when we do brave things, it can make us feel sad, nervous, like there's a big change, like something that's very kind of normalizing that this is an emotional experience for all of you, for the whole family. I mean, there's obviously, that's on a spectrum. If you're crying so much that you're unable to kind of say goodbye to them or work at that, that's perhaps different. But if you well up it, that's like just indication of how important this moment is, and they will feel that anyway, because it's happening to them. But to just say like, I'm feeling ... I think for me, I was expecting when I dropped my daughter off to feel more sadness or overwhelmed, but actually I did feel this wave of pride, like she's really grown up. Like that is both kind of sad, like my baby is going to school, but also kind of brilliant, like she's doing everything she's supposed to, like this is the next step, and to kind of celebrate that milestone for you as a parent as well. Yeah, we got her to this stage, that's quite exciting, well done. And yeah, as well as it being overwhelming in points as well.
Because when you get to this stage now where you've just said, okay, like I'm welling up with pride and, that's their first day, there's going to be two maybe different groups now happening here. Is one of the parents are going to go home and they're going to be like, okay, got to collect my kid at 12, because it's a half day, because it's the first few weeks. But there's also the other parent who's, I have to go to work now. And the thing is, when you go home, it's like, I can cry, I can blubber, I can listen to Taylor Swift and clean my house and just try and get into a good mood. And then there's the people who go to work where I have to hold my shit together. So is there something you can maybe address to the people who are going to work? Because it's not as if you can turn to your manager and be like, just drop my kid off to school, so I'm going to cry in the corner for like half an hour.
Although I'd argue most workplaces would understand that that's a big deal, right? Okay, but that's an aside. But I think most people would get that this is an important transition for you and that you might be feeling a little out of sorts for a time. Yeah, I suppose if you do have a work job or whatever that where you need to hold things together and be, you might have to give a presentation that day or something like that, then how can you also come back to the feeling later? Like give it the space and time that it deserves, even that might not be straight away. Have a conversation with your partner, talk to a friend, write in your journal something that's sort of marking that it is an important thing. And in the moment, it would be the same kind of emotion regulation skills that we've spoken about lots of different times of like, breathing, calming yourself down, getting some fresh air, maybe doing some exercise or something like that kind of is sort of moving the feeling around in your body a bit. And then, coming back to it later, not ignoring it because that doesn't make feelings any smaller, but just maybe giving it some space where you can.
Maybe also plan ahead your workday if it's possible to not schedule the big sales presentation on that morning then after. But if it's in somewhat of your control, shovel your day as free as possible or as not exciting as possible at work and pile up all your emails that you just can sit for 2 hours and just type away while you're sobbing and being proud of yourself. But if that's in your control, just try to really plan that day also for you. How can I make it a little more relaxed if it's somewhat in your power?
Yeah.
Can I ask about visualization? Is it something that would actually help us parents in the coming couple of weeks or months or whenever people's children might be starting school? Is it a good idea to maybe visualize it for ourselves? Because we've been told, bring your kids to the school, get them familiar with it. But is it something that we ourselves should be kind of like, okay, I'm bringing my kid to school. They're going in. How am I feeling? Like to kind of make it like not program yourself in a way, but just to kind of, is that like a visualization tactic, something that would help support us to kind of say, okay, now we're going to go and do this. And, if I do these steps that's in my mind and I do them on the day, it's kind of hopefully giving us that familiarity and that we're not going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah. There's a kind of a technique in EMDR therapy, which is a trauma therapy, but part of it is being able to play a film of yourself doing a future task that you want to be able to kind of succeed in or, be your best version of yourself in or something. So that can feel really helpful to imagine it, be like, okay, well, we're going to do this and this step and this step and this step. And then, maybe I'll feel this way. And if I feel that way, I'm going to do this to regulate myself. Yeah, I think that could be helpful as long as it's not too rigid. Right. As long as there's some flexibility that if something does, veer off course, then you can manage that change, even if it's not like your imagination. It's that sort of expectations, reality balance that we always have. But I mean, if that would be helpful, it's helpful certainly for things that are like job interviews or presentations or something where there's like high stakes, which I would argue your kids starting school is high stakes too, of being able to sort of imagine yourself responding in a way that would make you feel proud or use your strengths that you have. You're going to start visualizing.
Oh, it's just honestly it was just coming to me from the whole idea of that manifestation, like you manifest what you want. And so it was a case of, okay, let's call it visualization instead of manifestation for this, because as much as we try to prepare our kids for school through all these different things, as we've already mentioned, like maybe even talking about like how it was for us in school, as Maren was saying, except before maybe, and putting it in a better way. But there's a lot of ways we're preparing our kids for school, but sometimes it's like we're not checking in with ourselves ourselves to be kind of like, okay, how am I going to manage it? Because I got to keep my shit together on this. And as I said, like that whole thing that children are really perceptive and they have like an antennae like to tune into our behaviors and how we feel. And that's why we have to be so genuine with it. And so some of us, me, has to be really prepared for this, you know? And so I have to take these steps to be like, okay, I'm trying to say to myself, I guess what I should be saying to her, which is, you know, you're strong, you can do this, you know, you're going to make it through the first day. Because it's a case of, I don't want her to have any of my feelings. I want her to go in and to be like, I had the best day or whatever it's going to be. It's not going to be the best day.
I had a day. Whatever emotions are there, I had a first day.
Exactly. Yeah. It was like, it's just 3 hours, and it's again, like we're going to a non-typical school, I guess, is like that I grew up in, where you go, you sit at your seat and, you know, someone's going to lecture you for 6 hours or 8 hours. It's that whole thing that I'm like, okay, I need this help for me. So I'm going to do whatever I can for me. And I have read someone say something like, oh, you know, go for a coffee with a friend or book yourself a massage or do any of that. And honestly, all I can think about is crying into a coffee in front of someone, crying into the sheets of the massage parlor, crying into whatever it was, or even worse, you know, go get your haircut, you know, start your day in a way. And I'm like coming back, shaved head, you know, kind of thinking, I'm going to do this. So yeah, I'm trying to like just wind it back to be like, okay, let's be realistic. What are the steps we can do really just to help ourselves?
And what would actually feel good for you? And for somebody, it might feel great to have a haircut and to sort of zone out for a bit and think about that. Yeah, for somebody else, that would be really a stressful addition to a morning after leaving anything. And I think when you were talking, it reminded me of, we often talk about separation anxiety in toddlers and kids as being a kid thing. And of course it is, but it's you are being separated together. You are your little unit, your little family, and that gets separated. So you will feel all of the same feelings of like uncertainty and anxiety and worry. And yeah, that's entirely normal to have that sort of separation anxiety as a parent. Have you heard about the little heart on your hand? No?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's a really nice technique for child separation anxiety, you know, be it starting school or daycare or sleepover at grandma's house or something like this. You basically draw a heart on your hand and on their hand, and it can be like, some people call it a love button or a hug button or something like this. And the idea is that they can press it and that you can press it when you're separated, and that you can kind of feel connected in some way. And then later on you can come back in the day and be like, did you press your button today? And they'll be like, yeah, I did. And you go, oh, I felt it. I really felt it. And I pressed my button when I thought about you and wondered what you were doing at school and how you were getting on. And it's a nice way of being connected when you're not connected. There's also a nice book,
The Invisible String.
Invisible String, exactly. Yeah. It's the same idea of like, you know, we are now not together, but we are always connected, and how you can kind of, keep that. And also rituals around saying goodbye, like goodbyes and endings are really important for everybody, but particularly kids. Like, what do they need from you to feel like settled in that goodbye? Is it hug, kiss, special words, special routine of doing something? Like my son at the moment, he really likes to do hug, kiss, high five, and if you don't do it in that order, he doesn't like it. It will start all again. And there's something clearly kind of reassuring and safe feeling for him. So what do you need for that? What kind of ritual do you need? What kind of ritual do your kids need to separate?
Yeah, that's true. We do a hug and kiss ourselves for daycare, and it's like, she's very specific that it had to be the hug first. And then, you know, and I'm like, well, it could just be both. And it's like, no. So
yeah, kids really like it. It feels very safe for them. And it's the whole reason why we do a bedtime routine of sorts. Like, you do this and this and this, and you have a story and then say goodnight. There's something very, very reassuring around the safety of routines. And I think it's the same for parents too. We can say that our kids need it, but there's something very grounding in the routine as well.
Absolutely. So on the preparation of starting school, the first day of school, be it your child's actual first day at school, your first day of school if you've just relocated here, or the first day of school if you've moved equally. There's a couple of things to prepare for. So let's kind of go through a couple of tips maybe that we might have for helping people prepare themselves as well as their kids. So if there's any helpful tips you can think of, I'll just kick off one that I found myself was, you get all your clothes, everything ready together. You usually do this with your kid anyway. The night before, you've got all your kid clothes out, but it's actually, you have your clothes out as well. So the thing is like, there's no thinking, and it's trying to be as smooth to have everything ready to go for the next morning, that you're like, there's nothing to think about, but it's just a smooth ride of let's get up and let's reduce any kind of interjection and extra thought you might have to have.
Yeah. And that might be clothes. It could also be, what kind of batch cooking do you need to do for the week when it's the big transition, or what kind of work day, as we said, like whatever it is that sort of takes the squeak out the wheel. Is that the phrase? Yeah, whatever I mean, when you, you're trying reducing the friction of those days. Yeah, that would be helpful. Something about preparing for a new routine in terms of, you've got the summer holidays now, but in the days or weeks before that, is there something about learning or having like a visual board or something about like the days of the week a little bit? Like kids don't really, especially starting school, like time is still quite abstract until around 8 years old or so. But are there things that you can kind of be like, this is the time? Yeah. In terms of they know morning, lunch and dinner and that sort of time. But if you said, okay, we need to start at 8 or you'll be picked up from BSO at 4, like those things are really hard to grasp on to for quite a long time. So with that in mind, if you are doing a sort of preparing for school thing, which I know a lot of families do, probably not useful to do it too many weeks or days in advance, actually the week before starting school or 5 days before starting school, maybe do some sort of countdown or some sort of adjustment to the new routine.
Yeah, because with daycare, thankfully, some daycares are open at 7:30 or 8, and you can bring your child in. They're very flexible with when you go in. So obviously our little ones, as they go through different development peaks, sometimes they can sleep until 7:30, even 8. And so you're like, oh, it's okay, we can take it easy this morning. But now at school, it's like, no, there's a time and you've got to be there. There's like no other way about this. And I think that was also a peak for me, thinking about, oh God, like we have to be there at this time. So
yeah, it's a massive adjustment. I'm still getting used to it even though like I've never had a kid that lays in till 7:38. We're a sort of 5:36 family. But even that, there's never enough time. We're always rushing to get out of the house on time, and there's not really any leeway on that. You can't arrive late. So that's another stress. It's sort of to go gently with yourself about like it's a new adjustment in everything, in timing and the new rhythm of the day with school.
Would you think it should be a thing, like we were talking about the routine, getting as much regularity, like you said, saying the goodbyes should be the same? Should it be a case of taking the same route to school every single morning should also be the same, that it's a case of like make it as simple as possible?
If that helps you, yeah. I mean, for me, that's not that important, but yeah, if there's something about reducing the friction of always going the same way or whatever for you or your kid that would feel helpful, then do it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to take notes here of as much as possible of how to prepare for this in the coming months. I mean, at the end of the day, we are going to be looking forward to this, as you say. I mean, this is something to be proud of, the fact that our children are going to be starting, and it's a brand new era in everyone's life. And this is something I think we all need to take a soft approach on and to be gentle with ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, and celebrate. Celebrate that in whatever way feels authentic to you. It might just be a sort of acknowledging yourself, could be, in more of an obvious way, a celebratory drink or something like that. But yeah, to say, yeah, this is a big deal. Like it's starting school and it's in a whole different realm of parenting as well.
What I also find important is shifting, at least that's true for me and my experience in my school, that I really want to view the teachers as my team players. And I really want to shift that mindset of we are both working. They are working in the classroom and I'm working at home with my child to ensure they have the best start possible. And that was something that I needed to shift, because when I was growing up, I had a little bit of a hard time at school because I was always the loud one. I was very present. So the teachers were always like, oh, Maren is too much, Maren is too this. And my parents and the teachers were never a team, because my parents in that one area really were protective of me and really were going like, no, like you do not talk. Like they were defending me. So it was always it was always the narrative of we against the teachers kind of, and they're not doing a right thing and they're not supporting me in the right way. My parents getting frustrated. So I never had the feeling of my parents working together with the teachers. So that was also in my head, like, oh, I need to raise myself. And this is going to be the dynamic of, I know what's best for my child. They don't want her to be that way. They want to mold her into that. So that was like my first initial thought wave that came when I started thinking about school. And then I had to take a step back and realize that, first of all, we are going to a different school. I wasn't in a Montessori school. So really, this is, first of all, a full different set of school philosophy. And also of course, my school experience is 30 years in the past. So it was also a different time back then. So this is really the shift that I had to make. I am working as a team with them, and they are in my boat, in my corner. They want the best, and really being in contact with them and having those conversations, and also voicing my anxieties or my worries or whatever I have to them rather to my child, use them as a channel, but really going and addressing this with the teachers. And then they can reassure me, or they can say, well, we noticed this and you don't have to worry about that. Or if they see, I think there should be a little more support. How can we do this together? So really having this, it's a team effort.
Yeah. It's a really important place to start from, that you've both got the best interests of your kid at heart, and you know them so well as their parent, and they know them in a different way as a kid in school, and how you can align those in the vision of giving your kid the best opportunities and support. I think that's really nice, because often parents do feel a little combative with schools, especially if they've had poor school experiences, or they're something's come up with their kid and they've not felt understood. So that makes sense. But to go in there from we're a team, let's work together, is quite important.
And as we are a team right now, we're actually going to wrap this one up, because this is an endless conversation, I think, with all the different things we've gone through. As we are from 3 different countries, 3 different backgrounds, we could keep talking on and on about this. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to prepare. And so I think we're going to end it here, so we can all go off and start preparing for our kids going back to school, or starting school in the next month. So Naomi, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Maybe we should check back in I don't know, towards the end of the year, see how it's actually gone, that transition.
Yes.
For you.
Oh, me clinging onto my child, refusing to let her go.
Whether your fears about bawling your eyes out.
Eva has enrolled in school now.
It's the best way for me to learn Dutch. So I'm just going to go, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, good idea.
And if you have any parent friends out there who also have a little bit of anxiety around the topic of sending their kids to school, then make sure that you forward this episode to them, and also you like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. You can also get in touch with us on Instagram, Damn Parenting Podcast. And this is also the place where we prepare the notes for you from the episode. So we always bring out a little cheat sheet, so you don't have to remember everything that we say. We put it there together for you in a nice place. And there's also always the announcement of the next spurt that's coming on. So there is a lot of information waiting for you. Damn Parenting Podcast on Instagram. Make sure also that you rate us 5 dangling stars, so we get seen by other parents and people who this information might be useful for. Every Wednesday, we're coming out with an expert episode. Every Monday, Eva and I are chatting it away with the damn chats. That was it for this week. And we hope you have a smooth and relaxing start into the school year. Breathe, take it easy. It's not easy for anyone. So make sure that you are in the right space to provide that safe space for your child. And we will hear you on the next episode.
And enjoy the rest of your holidays while you still have them. Bye.